Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Fueled by Progress, hosted by me, Mark Joseph Szymanski. Today we have the boys in the studio. We got Nick DiSanti and Jimmy Farbo. How you boys doing?
Happy to be here, baby. Thanks for having us.
Can't complain, boss. Likewise.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I like to start out with some of the context, as some of the viewers may know. I know you guys have listened to a couple of episodes. Maybe we just start with kind of how we all got associated, how you guys got associated. Me and Nick, we've gone back, Canavan days? So like high school?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've lived all in the same.
We've been hammering together for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. And then you guys met via college, or kind of tell me that story a little bit.
Yeah, so I'll start it off. Started back at Penn State when my good buddy Dom Tarquinio met good old Nick DiSanti at summer session at Penn State. And whenever fall semester 2014 rolled around, we hit the fraternity rushes together, became boys, and the rest is history.
Nice.
And part of where it stemmed too is the fact that Jim and I were both engineering majors, so had a lot of the same classes together.
Yep.
Went through the turmoil of pledging together while being in engineering together, so that kind of bonded us quickly.
Yeah.
And we've just been boys ever since.
Yeah. So some of you guys, I think you guys know, and like I have absolutely no idea, like no understanding of what like the college experience is all like, just because I went to Pitt and I commuted. So like maybe give me a little bit of a background on how that all went, like pledging, and just like I know Penn State is notoriously bad for engineering as well. Is that true? So
definitely notoriously bad for engineering. Won't go too deep into the hazing stuff or pledging stuff or any of that.
Yeah.
But pledging and being an engineering major just in general, wherever you go, it's just a lot in terms of your time commitment. So having that bond with Jimmy and others just kind of added to the whole college experience right up front, right? Like, there wasn't any slow moving into it. You get there, you're doing that, you've got your classes, you're trying to meet people. I had the advantage of being at summer session, so I knew guys like Dom and some others right away. But yeah, it just kind of tosses you into the college experience right away. And, Penn State is just a massive, what's the right word? Like tornado. You get tossed in there, you're 1 in 50,000 all of a sudden. So you learn to adapt quickly. But it's good it was good to have a bunch of your, I guess you can call them forced friends at first. Now a lot of like good term long friends around. And that just made the whole beginning of the college experience awesome.
Right. Was it mechanical?
Mechanical for me.
Yeah, and I studied chemical.
Okay.
Chemical engineering.
Gotcha. Well, maybe we just kind of go there too. Like, so how is that? What did you guys think of that, like overall, and like how has that kind of affected you now as far as like professionally?
Yeah, I'll take this one.
Yeah.
So, the one thing I will say about Penn State engineering is, at least in terms of the chemical and mechanical and electrical engineerings, some of the disciplines that are a little bit more overarching, a little bit of a wider spread, wider focus. We got to learn a little bit about everything from heat transfer to fluid flow to mechanics to physics, you name it. We got a taste of each particular discipline, but there was one thing in common with all of those classes, and it was you learned how to solve problems. And I think looking back on my days at Penn State, Nick, I'm sure you could probably attest to this. You probably couldn't remember the specifics of the equations for heat transfer or Fourier transfer.
Using about 5% of what I learned in high school.
5%.
But like Jim said, the learning to solve problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're learning how to solve problems, and the way Penn State engineering really works is, and I'm sure it's like this for all other sorts of engineering problems and engineering schools across the country. But, the thing for me, and I'm sure, Nick, you can attest to this as well, is, when you're going through the engineering curriculum, they teach you a very regimented process of how to look at a situation, identify what variables you know, what variables you don't know, and then have a methodical process to go through, find the unknown variables, and then arrive at your solution. And I think that's transferable. And I know for a fact I use that thought process in basically everything I do. And Nick, I'm sure you're probably the same.
We're very analytical human beings.
Yeah.
And like getting back to what Jim was saying too, just kind of about how everything's transferable and you're learning a lot of the same stuff, especially across disciplines. To begin, I switched majors 4 times. I started in architectural. My cousin did it, didn't want to do 5 years. Switched over to petroleum on a couple recommendations. Didn't know if I wanted to be tied oil and gas for so long. Switched over to chemical actually for a little bit.
Yeah.
Didn't like organic chemistry, and then I ended up in mechanical, kind of just a nice middle ground area.
Yeah.
I figured it was fine. I was already too deep to switch out of engineering. Not that I regret it in any way, shape, or form, but yeah, it's all of that initial stuff, at least your first, I would say, 1.5 to 2 years, it's all the same. It didn't set me back at all switching 4 times because you're kind of doing all the same stuff up front, and you're learning that methodology for problem solving.
For sure. Yeah, I definitely can. I like how you articulated that, the Jim, this almost like the scientific process, if you will, of just like, kind of going through things and being very analytical about that. Because like you guys said, I think that is transferable to whatever you do. We'll get into a couple of these topics here, whether it's, real estate, business and stuff like that you guys are both interested in. I just think that's dope. So, but talk to me a little bit more about, like, maybe we dive into this a little bit, because I'm interested to hear about like I want to call it like the intangibles of college. I don't mean like the actual experience, but like, do you guys have thoughts on college? Because you guys had an experience, you went away, you lived on campus. It was kind of like being away from your home, from your parents and everything like that. You grew up pretty quickly, I would imagine, right? You became part of that family. You did all those types of things. And especially there's other dynamics of it too, like financially, like how, that all affects it and everything like that. I don't know. Do you guys have any kind of thoughts just on it in general in those terms?
Yeah, I can take a stab at this one. A lot of what I'm about to say is going to stem from the engineering curriculum itself, but it also, has to deal with how we managed our day-to-day lives. And, the thing I'll say about Penn State and our experience in general was Penn State taught me how to manage risk and manage my time. When I say manage risk, I am more so referring to the engineering curriculum itself. Because, Nick, I'm sure you could attest to the fact that whenever you have 4 hardcore engineering exams coming up and 10 homework assignments and 2 lab reports you got to do, there will come a time when you're out of juice. You got nothing left in the tank, and you're going to have to make a decision of, what am I going to sacrifice here? Right. Am I going to take a hit on this homework assignment that's due tomorrow? Or am I going to not study for this exam that's in 2 days? So, having to manage such a big course load on top of all of the social things that we were doing, I think I learned a lot personally about how to manage my time effectively, how to prioritize exactly what are the most important things that need to be done, and how to manage the inevitable losses with respect to grades and anything else that were going to come up.
Yeah, and to follow up on what Jimmy's saying too about managing risk, particularly in terms of the classes and things like that. He mentioned the social aspect of it, but again, being in a fraternity and having a lot of friends and that kind of thing, something's going to have to slide. And there are times when you're like, okay, I can take a C on this exam or a B on this exam because I want to go have fun with my friends, right? And when you're an engineering major at a good engineering school, and you have a lot of things to keep up with, but you still want to be a human, right? You're there, you're going to college, and you're trying to enjoy the college experience. There are a lot of times where we had to sit back and not do that, but there are other times when you're like, I can take a hit here, I can take a hit there. I want to go out, have fun with my friends. I want to go get my workouts in. I want to go to the football game this Saturday. But there have also been times where we've had to skip the tailgates and we've had to skip the parties. And, we had to miss certain things because, they were kind of 2 goals, right? There's the social and then there's the academic/career-based. But yeah, just to follow up on what Jim said, managing the risk and kind of deciding, what on a weekly, monthly, yearly, throughout the whole thing, what's going to affect you most. What are you happy with sacrificing?
Definitely.
So that's part of it too.
Yeah, that's an interesting balance there, like you're mentioning. And I wanted to ask you guys about this because, obviously we're connected on social media. You guys are wearing the Keep Hammering shirts and stuff like that today.
Was not planned.
like give me some insight into a couple things. Like, so how did you guys start this mindset and this work ethic of just like working out? Nick, I think I saw like back in the, I don't know how long ago it was. I don't know if you're still in it. Is it like jujitsu or something like that? Like
we got into jujitsu together, actually. Actually, last semester of college when we were super senioring at Penn State. Yeah. But before that, actually Jimmy lifted long before I did. I didn't even really get into fitness and stuff until college, but continue if you're whatever.
No,
you
yeah.
wanted
So
to-
I was just kind of interested in the origin story, and obviously you guys have, we talked about the wristbands off air. We'll talk about that and everything like that. Like all the stuff that you guys have. How have you? It's part of the show, right? Like, I mean, it's literally in the name, like Fueled by Progress. Like, how did you guys? I'm interested in breaking down and unpacking the story of how you guys got from like, in your life right now, from just like high school kids jumping into college, and then that whole episode of like college and balancing all that stuff, and now even the the couple years or so you guys have been out like in the professional world, how we unpack that and just see like, if you really step back, get like a 50,000-foot view of what happened. If you guys can, we can take as long as you want to try to understand how that kind of worked out. So like we could start though there, because I think that something that I'm constantly, it's been in and out of my life, is like fitness and like trying to be very disciplined on that. How do you think that you guys, and Jimmy, if you want to start, like, because you started before Nick, how did that start, and how have you evolved maybe in that arena?
Yeah, so just to clarify, are we talking with respect to the fitness aspect, or just, progressing in life in general?
I mean, kind of both. I would say fitness is probably like one niche of that. So we can kind of start there. I just kind of believe that I think of it like this, as you get so there's different, little pieces of you, right? So there's like a social piece, there's a mindset piece, there's relationships, maybe religion, spiritual, whatever, and then like fitness and like health. So as you go around and you almost like, take fitness for an example, or just health in general, and you start to focus on it and dial it in and get like a plan of action and just a lot more discipline in that area, then your life increases by 15%, right? And then you jump over to social and, same type of thing. So maybe we could start with health in general, health and fitness.
Yeah. So, for me, I went to St. James Elementary School from preschool to 8th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And while I was there, I will say I was a little bit of a sheltered kid.
Mm-hmm.
When you go to Catholic school, and I know you went to Catholic elementary school, and you guys both went to Canavan.
Mm-hmm.
At least from my perspective, we had the same 20, 25 kids in my class from preschool to 8th grade.
Yep.
That's how it was. And, I wasn't really exposed to football or to lifting weights or anything like that. Nothing really health focused. My family was never really into it.
Mm-hmm.
But to be completely honest, whenever I got to Moon High School, where I went, I started looking around, and we went from a class of 20 to 25 kids at St. James to all of a sudden 300 people in my grade, and I started looking around, and I was like, wow, man, this Ian Kelly kid, he's pretty jacked. Like, wow, Cole Blake, these guys have got it going on. So I was like, all right, well, I got to step my game up personally. And I always wanted to be stronger and be more fit for that reason.
Mm-hmm.
When I joined the freshman football team, I couldn't do 135 on the bench. I could barely do push-ups with pads on. And I see these guys when they're in 8th grade, repping out 225 pounds on the bench press. I'm like, what are you guys on? And for me, that was a motivating factor. Going into a new environment where I knew that I wanted to be kind of like that. So for me, at least in terms of the fitness, I started more so with the lifting weights aspect with respect to trying to get stronger for football.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, my goal was never to be like a great football player, but more so play football because I had an excuse to lift weights and then get strong.
Gotcha.
So that was probably the start of my fitness journey. And we can unpack the details in a little bit more.
Yeah.
I guess mine probably started similarly, but a little bit differently. I went to Catholic school, as well. I wasn't into lifting. I played soccer. I wasn't into running, but I ran.
Mm-hmm.
I had never really touched to it actually until college. Even in high school, we had a couple lifting sessions for soccer. Nothing serious. We ran and was going through some personal stuff going into college, and I didn't really care much for lifting weights or anything like that. And I told you I went to summer session, and when you're in summer session at Penn State, it's not like a full course load. You go and you take 6 credits, you take 2 classes, but otherwise you're just partying, lifting weights, and just learning to be on campus, learning to be in college.
Mm-hmm.
And all the friends that I had went to summer session with, my group of core friends, not only that I had just met, Dom and crew and some other friends I had from high school, they were all into lifting weights. And I remember going to the gym with them, and similar to Jimmy, they were all benching at least a plate on each side, 165, 185. you know, I couldn't even bench 95 pounds for a rep, right? I was a skinny kid. I didn't know how to lift weights. I had never bench pressed before or anything like that. And once I started with it, I kind of fell in love with it. And I'm sure Jimmy can attest to this, but, you know, throughout college and even now, I kind of became obsessed with lifting weights and bodybuilding and that kind of thing. And, you know, I quickly turned into, like I said, an obsessed kid in terms of lifting weights and stuff like that. And I got pretty good at it and I liked it. And, you know, I got really into the bodybuilding scene and I tried powerlifting and CrossFit and dove into a bunch of different areas of it. That's kind of where it stemmed, you know, and getting back to the whole engineering thing. Once you learn to break things down, like calculus is hard and physics is hard and chemistry is hard. Well, lifting weights is hard, but it's not really that hard technically. Right. So if you can break down something as difficult as, you know, like a complex fluid dynamics problem, it makes it really easy to break down weightlifting and things like that. And then you start putting a science behind, you know, weightlifting, maybe it's bodybuilding, powerlifting, whatever I was into at the time. And I went through spurts, but it was a good way for me to be able to translate the engineering stuff to stuff I became to ultimately like fall in love with and enjoy. Because like I said, I didn't like weightlifting, you know, until I got to college. I didn't even like it at first. I sucked at it. I was the weakest one. Like Jimmy was saying when he couldn't do push-ups with pads on, like I was in there benching the bare bar and my buddies Dom and Jay and them, they're, you know, repping out 135. And I'm like, you know, I don't want to swear too much. I feel like a little bitch, to be completely honest with you. You know, so it kind of made me obsessed with it for a long period of time, and it's just it does all kind of led to, you know, just exploring all kinds of different areas of fitness now, whether it be running, you know, Cam Hayes is a runner, running, and, you know, jiu-jitsu and all kinds of different stuff. It just led to an overarching like super interest in fitness in different areas of it, functionally, lifting, whatever it may be. So that was kind of it for me.
Guys, there is absolutely something I have to unpack here about Nick and your story. And I've got to give you praise, man, because, you know, the one thing I will say about you is whenever you have your mind set on something, dude, you absolutely dedicate every ounce of yourself to whatever you're doing. I remember this was spring semester freshman year. Nick was into lifting weights. And when I say he was into lifting weights, man, he was jack and steel every single day. He had his protein shakes, multiple a day. And I remember there was actually a point where you were trying to drink, I want to say, like a gallon of milk.
It was a half-gallon minimum.
Half-gallon minimum. I
was trying to put weight. I was a skinny kid. I was 135 pounds.
I remember you taking
going into college.
The half-gallon a day challenge. And I would look at you mixing it with these, you know, mass gainers, like 800 calories in a shaker. And I'm like, well, you're getting after it. Like, you are dedicating every second that you can to lifting weights. Yeah, I remember even sometimes you would skip some class to go hit the gym because, like, you need to get that lift in. Like, you need to clear your schedule because, you know, if it's compound leg day, I mean,
you need to do it.
You better block off 3 hours because the boys coming to, you know, set up shop in that squat rack. So I just remember that gallon of milk and half gallon just vividly. Just remember you just slurping it down.
When you had meal points, it was too easy too, right? You just go in and you grab it.
Yeah.
And part of it too is because we pledged our fall semester freshman year, so like the lifting kind of fell off. We didn't get to do it quite as much, and then spring hit, and it was just like I got all the time in the world.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I think that. So again, like to kind of to like compare and contrast here, right? Like I know you, Nick, from like high school and stuff like that, and you obviously went through like a transformation there. Do you think too, like, what was your main motivating factor above that too? Was like, do you think that it has hardened you as far as like mentally or like from like almost like, so I play ball hockey and I think that not only like just trying to stay fit and like stuff like that, but like even like a stress reliever type thing. Is it kind of like like, do you feel like you get in like a zone or anything when you go to the gym and just any sort of like physical fitness type thing?
Yeah, absolutely, man. It's meditative. It's therapeutic. It's, you know, it was one of those things where, you know, like I said, I was going through some personal stuff coming into college, and I was, you know, you knew me in high school. I was not like I am now whatsoever. I was a different human. And, you know, it kind of hit me when a lot of that stuff kind of went down, and I was going through some stuff. Like, I was like, I have to choose now whether I can go down this terrible path and kind of like stay there, or I can kind of like go down the righteous path. And thankfully, I chose the righteous path. because, it got me where I am today.
Right.
But working out was just one of those things where like, I didn't really, I was in engineering school and like, I was good at math and science, right? So, I chose engineering. That was just kind of the natural progression of someone who's pretty good at math and science in high school. You choose an engineering major of some sort. But I still didn't really have a whole lot to kind of like latch onto. And that's kind of why when the whole fitness thing kind of sprouted at the beginning of college, I kind of clung to it so tightly and used it as almost like a release or something to focus on, or like something to put my energy toward that wasn't just totally related to academics and, a career down the road, because that stuff was hard enough to kind of like wrap my head around.
Right. Yeah, I feel that. Yeah. So like moving forward too, and like kind of staying with that same realm, like who are some of your guys' biggest influence? So like, I don't know Cameron Haynes like specifically, but like what is, how has that evolved even outside of like college now? So obviously like Nick, for instance, like you put on some mass, like you were doing that stuff, you were experimenting with jujitsu, CrossFit and all that. Are you guys more into like, or maybe we can even talk about the wristband thing too. Like that's like maybe a very objective thing. What's the evolution been like sort of since college?
Yeah, so I think, at least for me personally, I noticed that my body was starting to break down a little bit from lifting weights 5-6 days a week every day for years on end. And as Nick and I started to go into different sports, namely golf, and at least in our last semester at Penn State, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, we started to realize that functional fitness was of the utmost priority. There's no point in being strong if you're not flexible. I don't want to be the guy that can bench press 400 pounds but can't sling the rock with my kids. You know what I mean? So I started transitioning away from those bodybuilding type exercises to more functional things, more flexibility, more yoga, more things that are going to allow me to be better at the sports that I'm doing. Because, at the end of the day, when I look back at myself 4 or 5 years ago, I look back at myself as a high school football player and a wrestler for 1 or 2 years. And, the biggest thing there, at least for me back in those days, was I was working out for a purpose, right? I was lifting weights to be strong, to go be on the football field, right? But whenever I got done with high school and then I got to college, then all of a sudden there was that gap between, all right, well, I'm working out, but like there's no end goal, right? There's no sport I'm trying to play. There's no team atmosphere. And, for me, as we transitioned through college a little bit, whenever I stumbled upon jiu-jitsu and then Nick and I went on that endeavor together, whenever we found more of a team-based atmosphere, something that I felt that was lacking in my life, whenever I found that was the signal to me to say, hey, man, let's transition the body work to something that's going to make me better at what I'm doing.
Gotcha. Yeah. What was that like too? Like, so Nick, are you a jiu-jitsu champion? I saw that.
No, so actually, I'll say thanks to Jimmy, because Jimmy actually, I'd always been interested in kind of, the UFC and that kind of thing, but never had really done much of it.
Yeah.
And Jimmy had been telling me for weeks or probably months that, come that semester, he was going to go to the gym and, start doing jiu-jitsu. And he's like telling me to do it. I'm like, all right, maybe I'll do it, whatever. And then he went like the first time, and I wouldn't say dragging me there is the right thing to say, but Jimmy pretty much got me to start doing it. So although we started around the same time, same week or whatever, Jimmy ignited that, right? Like and then we started doing it, and to bring the team thing into it too, that it was so cool, because I had been listening to Linkin Park and EDM and lifting weights alone.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden to be in this environment with people and kind of like be on a team and be with a bunch of people, that was really cool. And to also kind of be humbled and understand that like there are things outside of lifting weights, like lifting. It's easy to learn to lift weights, right? Like you can do it, and then after a couple months you're like, oh, you're getting pretty good at it. Then like with something like jiu-jitsu, and you do it and you're humbled, and then you realize you're kind of trying to learn like a skill. And that was really cool to learn that there are like things outside of just like, lifting weights, powerlifting, bodybuilding, whatever it was. And that's where I started to transition to, the golf and these other things, these functional forms, fitness, yoga, things that are more of like a practice than like kind of like a routine. They're routine, but there's always things to learn. And it was just something different. And I think part of it too, and Jim can probably attest to this, it's just cool to be able to like not be good at something, like trying new different things that you suck at, like whether that's like running or jujitsu or yoga or CrossFit. Like it's fun to suck because you get to make those like virgin gains, virgin improvements. So where I'm trying to wrap this up is that's where a lot of like the try to do it all stems from, just like that constant improvement and all the things. And Mark, I know you can attest to that, just maybe not as much on a fitness level, but with everything you're doing. So for me, that's kind of where the drive to do all these different things comes from, is just, it's nice to suck and get better at something.
Yeah. It's definitely, there's another side to it though, I think too. It's like, when you have to be humble. You have to have a lot of humility to jump into something that you're going to suck at, especially if it is going to be. It's a mindset thing and perspective, but if occasionally though, I think there are some people, I think I struggle with it at times, is like if you jump onto, a basketball team and you're really bad at basketball, you're going to be the shittiest basketball player out there. And it's like, you're definitely going to make those gains if you stick with it, but you got to make sure that you get over that hurdle at first. I think people struggle with that. So I don't know. That's just one thing.
People can get really easily deterred if something's really difficult, but once you've done it in a few different things,
no,
and you're like, okay, now I know that this is how
you've
this
mastered
works.
The skill of sucking.
You master the skill of sucking, right?
Yeah.
And then like especially with jiu-jitsu, you're getting choked and joint locked and all these different things, and all of a sudden you're doing that to other people. Yeah. And then it's like,
definitely
that's cool. But you learn the art of sucking.
Yeah.
You learn
the
that
art of sucking. That's a good way to put that. It's probably a book written by that, The Art of Sucking.
I would imagine.
I don't know. I mean, even things like golf and stuff like that, I was going to say, like, I'm not sure too much about jiu-jitsu, but I know like golf is a very interesting one because you're basically playing against yourself. It's just a total mental game. And, I think that's almost harder than playing against other people at sometimes, depending on, what the case may be. So,
yeah. And, real quick, guys, I think there's something important that I think we should unpack here a little bit. And, it's about the mindset of going into something that you have not done before and being humble enough to A, get your butt kicked, and B, be willing to learn. And I know that's something that both Nick and I have acquired over time. And, I'll tell you what, man, by being a new guy in a new school and going and trying to put myself in uncomfortable situations, I can personally say that I've been a little bit accustomed to, being that humble guy because I have no choice but to be. Right. And, I think it's such an important mindset for people to have, is if you're going into somewhere new and you want to, try something out, you got to put your ego aside and you got to say, hey man, like, I know my place. I know I'm here to learn and I want to learn. And I think at least for me, and Nick, I'm sure you could speak to this as well. But I think, at least for me, whenever I'm trying to do something in jiu-jitsu or golf or whatever it is in my life, like some of the things that keep me going is that incremental progress, right? It's seeing myself go from not being proficient at something to being proficient. That's what keeps me going. It's that incremental step forward. And as long as you keep making that step forward, then, to me, that's what, kind of it's all about.
Fueled by progress, right, Mark?
That's it. That's the name of the game, man. I totally agree. Obviously, it's the progress thing for me, obviously, with the name of the show and everything, is like, and Nick and I were talking about this before we came on, but especially when you're trying, like you said, different things, it's easy to feel like you're not making a lot of progress, because I liken it to this. I have this metaphor made up in my head that, whether it's jiu-jitsu, golf, and, running or something like that, or these three things, it's like kind of like you're building like a little city. I don't know if I've said this before on the podcast or not. I probably said it on a live stream, but it's like you're building a little city and like you're building foundations of buildings. And then like I liken it to businesses. So you have those foundations, and then once those are really well, like, organized and like you're like intermediate in those things, then you can build up, right? You can be, very advanced, but it takes time. It's patience, persistence. It's crazy.
It's funny you say that because this is something Jim and I say all the time. It's like we're okay at a bunch of things now.
Yeah.
And I think I've even like posted something weird on LinkedIn. Like, would you rather, be amazing 99.9 percentile at one thing forever? Or, the route that we're kind of taking, the approach that we're taking is like, okay, well, we're okay at everything right now, or like not very good at things. But the idea of, 10 years down the road being pretty darn good at a lot of different things is kind of like Jim said, the incremental progress. It's like it's all about the journey. You get to spend all this time improving all these things. And like, although us and people like us, whatever you're doing, you might not be so good right now. You start to build those buildings, and then over time, those buildings get big, and that's how you have that city, right? And like, it's the same thing with all these different forms of fitness and like whatever your career, networking, do whatever you want to do. Over time, you get good at all of them. Yeah. So like, kind of the not putting all your eggs into one basket and being kind of crappy, but slowly getting better. All those things is like kind of the approach.
Definitely. Yeah. No, I mean, that's just it, man. It just takes time, and it's tough. I think it's tough while you're doing it because it's hard to see, like where you might go. But as long as you just continue it on, I think that, just time tells. And like we were, again, even before, like we were saying, you have other people. Luckily, we live in a time, honestly, where you can see other people that have made success in those areas, right? You can look up to certain people that are in the fitness industry, or you can look up like podcasters and stuff like Rogan and stuff like that. And you can see like, well, this is literally the journey that they took. And you can see, because it's all documented out, like, oh, they did this, they took this step, this step, this step. And then eventually they just get to, where you're at. And, I think of, I was going to make a point about the part that you said there, like 99.9% efficient at something, right? Versus being really good at a bunch of things. I think about that a lot. I think about most of the things that I've been doing for a long time, I would consider myself like above average, but not the absolute best. And then if you just think about that and extrapolate it to newer things that you're trying now, down the line, you're going to be a fucking beast at a bunch of things. Not like maybe the best, but
pretty darn good at a lot of things.
That's it.
Good. Yeah.
That's it.
And part of it too, I know you're talking about role models, Mark, and we haven't gotten into that much yet, but like, a lot of people have a role model, and, that's fine. But I know the approach that Jim and I take is kind of the approach of having a role model in different areas, all of which areas you like. Maybe it's Rogan being the generalist, Cam Haines with running and archery, whatever it is. You have these role models in these different areas, and you can kind of look to them as pillars of like being the best in all of the different areas that you want to be good at. Maybe it's Jocko Willing with discipline. Maybe it's Matt Fraser with the CrossFit thing. Maybe it's this power lifter, this runner, whatever it is. You have this big set of role models that you can look to improve in all those different areas. So
definitely. Yeah. Yeah, so I think we should unpack that a little bit more too, because you just said some names there like Jocko and stuff, and they're people that I have definitely heard of. Jocko specifically more than a couple of the other ones, but I'm interested in this because we're actually foreshadowing some of the final three questions that you guys are going to get asked here at the end. But regardless, it doesn't matter. It's because these are really important, and this is probably the meat and potatoes of like a lot of the episodes. Is I have this idea that I have been almost conditioned by the things that I have, the influences that have been on my life, like indirectly, mostly. Like, so I'll to give you some context, and then I'm gonna kind of pose this question to you guys. Throughout my years, high school, college, and everything like that, I took in a lot of influences from like my real world, if you want to call it, like the first person connections, but a ton, probably like magnitudes more, from like YouTube and like the internet and stuff like that. And I think that there's a lot of people, like we were talking about, there are role models and influences that I have been molded and shaped via that. So like just names off the top of my head: Gary Vee, Jordan Peterson, Jocko is in there. Just people in like web development, like all these different places. So like maybe the first big question is, where do you guys feel like you get most of your influences? Is it from YouTube? Is it from like is it personal relationships? Is it indirect? And then like, what's the source? Is it like YouTube? Is it like, do you guys read a lot? Because I don't read at all. So I mean, I just throw that in there. Like, what do you guys kind of think as far as where you get most of that, those new thoughts from?
Yeah, so I can answer this question in two parts. Firstly, I want to talk about my days when I was a little bit younger. and going through middle school and high school. And, the person I'll say who was an absolute huge influence on me was my old man. And I'll tell you what, my dad, he was a tough love kind of guy. When I was younger, I didn't get grounded. It wasn't like traditional, oh, you're not going to have your cell phone for a week. It's like, no, like you're going to get screamed at the top of your lungs, and he's going to make his point, and then that's going to be the end of it. And then it's all good. And for me, my dad was a very work hard, play hard guy, and I know that rubbed off on me a lot. And the thing I'll say about that is when I was younger, I could just remember in high school specifically thinking to myself, man, like, for my dad, like, I know he wanted me to do really, really well in school, but he was never the kind of parent that was, always breathing down my neck. Like, oh, like, did you get a good grade in this? What'd you get on this spelling test or whatever? It was always like, hey, Jim, it's your life. Do what you want. If you want to blow it, go blow it. But, if not, do your thing, whatever. And like, because he was less of a helicopter parent and, more of someone that like instilled in me, hey man, it's your choice. Do what you want. I know for me, that was a huge personal driver because, he placed a lot of the onus on me to try and be successful. He never told me to be successful. He was like, hey man, it's your life, do what you want with it. And for me, having the chance to kind of assume that ownership myself and realize that, my actions now were going to directly influence what happens in my future. When I learned that at a young age, it almost made everything that I was doing in my life very, very addictive, right? It made me want to do really, really good in school because I knew that was my way out. I knew that, he wasn't going to hold my hand all throughout because at the end of the day, he's not going to be here forever. So, that was probably the biggest thing when I was a little bit younger is kind of being able to assume that ownership for me. And then, the second thing I'll say is, in the terms of podcasts, I'm a big Joe Rogan fan, big Jocko Willink fan. Those are the two biggies for me. And, I can just remember one day when I was listening to one of the Joe Rogan podcasts with David Goggins on it. And David Goggins said something that really, really resonated with me that it honestly kind of changed my life. And he said something along the lines of, there is no end. There is no such thing as the end. You complete one mission, what's up next, right? And up until that point, I always thought to myself, yeah, like I'm going to try and sprint to the finish line, try and, get the good job, retire early, then coast off into the sunset. But that does not exist because there is no end. You're going to get sick of being on the beach for, months on end, sipping martinis. Like that's going to get old. Like you always have to have some sort of mission in your life. And then, when I realized that, because there is no end, it's all about the journey, then it's like, all right, bet, like, let's just keep on trying to make progress in everything that we do because that's what life is going to be. There is no end.
Yeah. I could not agree more with that. Like this sentiment of like working for 40 years, retiring at 60 and then doing, whatever the fuck you want. Like that sounds awful to me. And obviously why, you can kind of see like the things that I'm trying to do. And it's not like, any disrespect or, throwing shame at people that think that way, but it's just like, maybe they just need to have like that sort of a moment, that you just described there where it's like, well, it's, I think we get so wrapped up in the very like small space that we're in all the time in a sense. Like we're always like, going from work to here, coming home, like all the influences that we have, like generally people have like, television, stuff like that you don't ever kind of back up and just think like, I'm just like going in a hamster wheel. Like I'm just running for no reason. And then when you really think about it and you have a moment like that, it's like, it's very eye-opening. And I've had, I think, multiple of those. And it doesn't need to be drastic as like quit your job and start businesses. It just means that you need to focus on yourself, the things that you want to do, the things that you want to continue to progress in, and just make sure that your life is fulfilling. I think that's pretty much the ultimate goal, at least for me. So
something I'll add on what Jimmy said there. We share a lot of the same role models in the Rogans and the Goggins and the Jockos of the world, podcasts and that kind of thing. And I think Jimmy and I share a lot of the same in the influences there. But the one thing I wanted to add on is a lot of where I get my influence from and my learning from is from people around me and my friends and my peers, and those that I can talk to that have been in situations that I've been that I've been in before. And kind of being like a conversationist and being able to, I learn a lot by asking questions. It can be overbearing sometimes, but one of the ways that is best for me to learn and to figure out, how to get through things, how to get out of situations, how to achieve something. I like looking up to the role models and that kind of thing. But the other area that for me is, I'm not saying like having a lot of friends or knowing a lot of people, but knowing who to turn to for specific things and being, confident enough to talk to those people and try to pick their brains and try to learn from somebody who's been through something or done something that I haven't done, or maybe it's something I have done. But I feel that I learn a lot from just having conversations with others that are, either experienced in that specific thing or have been through that specific thing. Like, and, I know Jimmy has been on the path for longer than I've been on the path on, and I can't even tell you how many plays out of Jimmy's playbook I've taken. Yeah. So like I'll go to Jimmy, I'll go to, other buddies of mine, I'll go to people I've worked with in the past, friends that I went to college with, that I know are experienced in this or have been through that, and just pick their brain on it. Because if I can't ask a quick follow-up question, like Rogan's talking to me or David Goggins or Jocko's talking, and like I'm like, oh, that's a good point, but I want to ask a question about that. And it's kind of more of like a monologue, or I guess a monologue, as opposed to like a conversation. It's a little harder for me sometimes to pull out of it, and I can get a little bit distance from like what I'm listening to. If you're listening to a 2-3 hour podcast, you kind of fall out of it. But if I'm having that open conversation, it sparks ideas, and it forces me to ask questions and get those questions answered I might not have been able to have had answered. So that's kind of like the other 50% of it for me, at least. I'm sure the same for you, Jim, is just being able to talk to people about different things and just use other people as, I don't want to say use other people as tools, but go to other people to learn, and use them as role models or just examples. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I think that's, as you go throughout life, you have, college experience, friends from before then, you have different jobs and stuff like that. All the people you meet along the way. I think you'd be foolish to not, utilize that network to the best of your abilities. And I think that's a great, just a great thing to kind of, pass on and, kind of emphasize there. So I like that. I like that a lot. I don't think we touched on those on the, what are they called?
Oh, the whoop strap.
The whoop straps. Let's hit that, because I've seen a lot of it on Instagram, but I don't know the actual context.
What do you want to know? Just what it's all about? What we use it
like
for?
that.
So we're pretty new to it still. I mean, we've had it for about a month, but it's quickly become an addictive thing. Yeah.
So give me the backstory, how you guys learned about it, and then like kind of like exactly, is it like Fitbit-esque but like harder, or more legit?
This one's all you know.
Okay, so since getting this, which one of our buddies got it first? Who got it first?
I think it might have been Adam Pintar.
And
then Adam Holes. We got to get
Holes. So our buddy Adam Holes has had it for a long period of time, and then one of our buddies around here got it, and then like 5 or 6 of our friends, we just all kind of ended up getting it. Yeah. And I've never used any sort of fitness tracker. I've never had a Fitbit or an Apple Watch or anything like that. I've had heart rate monitors that I wear during a workout, but they don't, give you the sleep data and different kinds of things that this gives you. And I guess I'll start with what's pretty cool about this thing is, although I don't love the hardware, the software is really cool. But the best thing is that you never have to actually take it off. It has an external charger that you charge, and then you put it on here. So, once it's charged, it lasts 4 or 5 days. You keep it on in the shower, it's waterproof, whatever. And essentially, it just takes your heart rate data, but it tracks a lot of cool metrics. It doesn't necessarily just track your heart rate. It tracks things like heart rate variability, which is the difference in time between different heartbeats. So, if you have 60 heartbeats per minute, that's not 1 second between all of them. It might be 0.8 or 1.2. And there's a variability there, and that essentially, lets you know how well your body may be able to adapt to strain based on what that score is. And there's different metrics like that. It tracks your respiratory rate, your resting heart rate. It tracks your sleep consistency, what time you're going to bed, what time you're getting up in the morning. It tracks all these different things that, and again, I'm not voting for it because I've never used any other fitness tracker, but being a first-time user of a tracker, it's a really cool piece of technology. And that allows you to make active improvements and monitor trends both like in your fitness and just your lifestyle. Like I know for me, I don't really care for it that much as like a workout tracker, right? So, Jimmy and I have used heart rate monitors for a long time now just to track workouts. And like, I could use my Polar to do that. And this is fine. It's on my wrist. It is what it is, but it's more about using it to develop trends to make lifestyle improvements, in sleep, in the diet. How does having a couple beers tonight affect my HRV and my resting heart rate? How hard should I work out today based on how my recovery was, right? So, you'll have a recovery percentage, for example. You'll get up the next day and it'll say, hey, maybe you want to take it easy today. Your resting heart rate was through the roof last night. You had a low HRV, and then yourself, your diet was crappy. You might just want to back off today. So it kind of helps train you up a little bit in that sense. And, I'll tie it up with, I've only had it for a month or maybe 5 weeks or so, but it's had a pretty significant impact. And, and one more thing I'll say is, and Mark, we talked about this a little bit before the show, but pretty much all positive. The partial negative is like, it almost gives you a weird anxiety checking it all the time and always looking at it. You get up in the morning and you look at your recovery, like, oh, I had a bad day of recovery. Like now I'm going to, let that loom over me all day. So like in a weird way, I want to just take it off for like a month now and just live my life a little bit. Yeah. But no, definitely a net positive investment. It's a pretty cool piece of technology. Has some really cool software features and tracks some really cool things. Hardware, don't love it.
But why is that?
It's the charger just feels like it's going to break in any second. The strap is a little, it's comfortable, but it's a little bit frustrating to kind of like move around, get on and off. I do like that it doesn't have a screen. So like I'm not checking text messages on it or anything like that. It's a subscription-based service too. So they gave you the device for free.
Okay.
They give you the device for free.
They suck you in.
If they want to suck you. If you want it, Mark, by the way, use my code. I'll get a free month. But that's my 2 cents on it. Sorry if that went a little long there.
No,
I was just trying to give you the whole roundabout.
Jim, do you have some things to add to that? If not, like I have a lot of things that I'd like to unpack about that. But what's your experience so far? Similar?
Yeah, so I've had a very similar experience to Nick on it, and given the fact that we are both very data-driven people, it's really cool to kind of see what my actions during the day are doing to affect my sleep and my recovery when I'm, in the bed. And, one of the things I will say is, before having the Whoop, I would like to try and plan my workouts out a week in advance, saying, hey, I'm going to lift weights first 2 days of the week, then maybe run 2 days of the week, and then after that hit jiu-jitsu a couple of days. But now that I have this recovery tool, and I can open up my app and say, hey, you're 47% recovered today. Well, that tells me that if today's a big, heavy lifting day and I'm only 30-40% recovered, well, then it may not be the best time to go lift those weights. I may be better off trying to do yoga or something like that, something a little bit less strain on the body. So for me, it's helped dial in what I'm doing on a daily basis. But to kind of add to what you were saying, Nick, about some of the sleep data, for me, I think at least in the month that I've had it, it's really opened my eyes up to what some of the more negative activities that I sometimes engage in are doing to me. If I go and, go party with my buddies and have some beers and I'm staying up late and I'm not getting great sleep, well, it's really, really eye-opening to see what effect that is having on my resting heart rate, my heart rate variability, and in turn my recovery. For me, it's helped try and solidify in some positive habits in my life, and at least, a couple that I can name off the top of my head, ones that I did not think made a single difference at all, after looking at the data, are actually making a huge difference. For example, eating right before bed. Every time I've eaten right before bed, I've had some of the worst recoveries that I've ever had on this Whoop strap. And I think it's because my body's trying to digest and process and do all of those things while I'm sleeping, and it's hurting my sleep. So there's one thing, trying to not eat right before bed. It's helped me try and tighten my feeding window a little bit and have my last meal maybe 5 or 6 o'clock at night, and then have at least 3 hours of not eating before I go to bed. And that's absolutely been game-changing because I've woken up and I felt refreshed because of that. So that's one thing. The second thing I'll say is, I try and sometimes take a play out of Jocko Willink's book and get up at 4:30 in the morning and hammer, right? But the more I start to realize that, yeah, sure, I'll get up at 4:30 and I'll have a couple really, really good days, but what happens when Friday and Saturday night rolls around? Then I'm staying up till maybe 1 or 2 in the morning, and then I'm waking up at 9 or 10. So, what's that doing to my circadian rhythms? How is that affecting my sleep for the next week? So trying to have a more consistent sleep cycle, trying to not eat before bed. And then the final main thing I'll say is the thing I've been experimenting with lately is trying to not use or look at any screens before bed, at least 1 hour before bed. And I've noticed that in the nights that I have done that, nights with about an hour leading up to bedtime, maybe I'll read, maybe I'll meditate, maybe I'll just do anything that does not involve looking at a piece of technology. And I've noticed that has helped improve my sleep as well. So, through this, it's been a tool to help try and build good habits, like Nick was saying. And overall, I'd say net positive as well, because I will say some of the hardware could be a little better.
Yeah.
Even though sometimes you might have bad recoveries, there's still the days you just want to get up and hammer.
And we still do.
And we still do. I had a horrible recovery yesterday, but also took one of the longest runs of my life yesterday.
14 miles.
I saw that.
Just because I needed to do it for my sanity. I was like, this recovery's bad, but I need to do this.
Yeah, that was crazy.
So sometimes you ignore the data, but it's...
Yeah. So, okay, so lots to unpack there. So, first question is just completely curious. What are your guys' average resting heart rates? You're just chilling. What is it?
I'm in the mid 50s. He's lower than me. You're what, high 40s, low 50s?
On a good night, it's mid 40s. On an okay night, it's low 50s. And on a bad weekend of drinking, it's sometimes high 50s, low 60s.
And is that just when you're sleeping? Is that when that's tracking that?
Correct.
And you could look on the app, I guess at any time and just see what your heart rate is, just chilling here?
You can look and see what it is at any time, yeah.
Okay. And you said that on your Instagram yesterday, I think you said average BPM of 160 while you're running. So is that, walk me through that, as far as the education, is that good?
Well, so that gets kind of a little bit into heart rate training as it pertains to running and different zones of your heart rate as you're doing extended cardiovascular activities. So that one's a little bit different, but I'm happy to kind of dig into it if you want.
Well, I noticed that you noted it. So I know that for me, so way back, I don't really check my heart rate too much often, but anytime that you get your blood pressure taken, or way back when I had the phone with the heart rate tracker thing on it, it was pretty low. It was in the 50s, somewhere around there, which I thought was interesting because I don't emphasize physical fitness, but I've always kind of been into running and active sports like that. So, but I do know obviously that when you're running on a treadmill or running outside or something, that your heart rate goes up, any sort of exercise. And I was wondering is there a threshold that you're trying to shoot for? Do you want it to be kind of higher when you're doing that? And I guess it's heart rate training. It kind of is what you're kind of referring to. So
yeah, sure. So kind of with the whole running thing, and again, I'm no expert here. I just I've run for a long time, and I've developed some strategies, pulled from different people that I follow and look up to, and things I've read. But essentially, the way I kind of look at all of that with the heart rate training with cardiovascular activities is kind of in a zone format, and you'll see a lot of that and explained differently. If you go online and do some reading and, you follow individuals that are interested in and kind of project some of that stuff. But there's a zone 1 through 4, zone 1 through 5. And, when I'm running, kind of the promote fitness gains over a long period is to hit that 75 to 80% of my heart rate extended over a long period of time. And, what I've noticed is sometimes I take a month off from running, or it gets cold and I'll do something else. Yep. But I tend to look at my heart rate a lot when I'm training. And again, I'm no expert, but I've been running for a long time now. And what I kind of notice over time is when I'm going through, spurts of trying to get back into shape, maybe running for 3 or 4 months, and I run in different heart rate zones. So I might try to say, okay, I know if I run at 160 to 165 BPM over a long period of time, maybe, 5 to 10 miles, over time as I take those runs and run at that same heart rate, instead of trying to say, I want to get a better pace today, I'm going to say, I want to run at the same heart rate I ran at over this period of time. My pace, if I'm getting better at it, should be getting faster, right? Mm-hmm. So if I run 10 miles one day, my heart rate's 160 BPM. Maybe I run that at a 9-minute pace. Mm-hmm. I do the same thing 3 weeks later, after doing some different short runs and some different heart rate training, and again, I won't go too deep into it, but the idea is that as I get into better shape, I take that same 10-mile run at 160 BPM, but now my pace is 8 minutes and 30 seconds, or it's 8 minutes and 15 seconds. And there's a lot of other things at play there too, like how recovered you are and how sore you are, and, what kind of day you're having, what your fuel source was like the day of and the day before. But in general, if you run a similar distance or any extended distance at a specific heart rate, over time, your pace should naturally go down. And you'll hear David Goggins talk about this a lot too. He runs in these heart rate zones. And he says he'll run in whatever his zone is at this heart rate, and over time he's shaved all this time off of that. And that's kind of how at least I gauge how in shape I am, is kind of when I'm running in those zones. Maybe even if it's a 5K, right? Like whatever I'm trying to do, I base it more off of heart rate than just off of like my pace and distance.
Yeah, interesting. That makes sense. I like how I feel like, again, I'm a complete amateur, but it sounds like from what you're saying there, you're kind of basing it off of the way your body handles running. Because I'm assuming that I'm trying to relate it to like almost like how fast you were running, or sense, like your pace, like you were saying, right? So maybe your pace for 160 is so-and-so, but somebody else's is different. So you're like just, again, analyzing the data and taking that into account and making sure that you're trying to, progress
exactly
as best as possible.
And again, I'm no expert.
Yeah.
These are just things that I found that work for me really well. And, I think people can form their own strategies from doing heart rate training, through running or whatever it is. Cardiovascular exercise is just good for you. And that's one of the ways to gauge how you're doing.
Yeah. And I'm fascinated too about like how you guys are, again, how going back to the generalist and, doing a bunch of different things. So like whether it's jiu-jitsu or it's weightlifting or it's running, like all these different things. And the piece that I have tried to implement with somewhat of an emphasis on fitness and everything is the routine though. Like I'm fascinated with, how like for a while, especially when you're working and whatever, like sometimes you want to stay up later because, you have something to do, show to watch or whatever. And then, you have to get up at a certain time. I've tried to build my life a little differently now so I can go to bed when I want to go to bed and wake up when I want to wake up when I want to, but still make sure that you get the appropriate amount of sleep and stuff. Do you guys, like, have you noticed with the Whoop straps even, like what kind of, Jim, you talked about it a little bit, but like the stuff that affects your recovery, like how does that really like make up, like what makes up those numbers? And like, is there like kind of a sweet spot as far as like sleep and stuff? Like I always wonder, I see Jocko waking up at 4:15. Like, is he not getting a lot of, like, when does he go to sleep? Like, just those types of questions. It's, I don't know, like how you build a routine off of something like that.
Yeah. The thing I'll say about that, Mark, is I think, at least for me personally, with respect to having the Whoop strap,
yeah,
I try and find the balance of doing what the Whoop strap is recommending me to do,
right,
and also doing what my body is telling me to do. So, I mean, no one else knows my body better than I do, right? So
right.
I personally know that if I don't get at least 7.5 hours of sleep, I'm as good as useless the next day. And then, if I do get 6.5, 7 hours, like, yeah, maybe I'll have a good day like tomorrow, but then the next day is shot, right? So I know that I need to get that sleep. So, for me, it's an exercise in prioritizing what I think I need to get done, right? So for me, I literally have on my weekly goal list, get 8 hours of sleep every single night. And if I go to bed at 10 o'clock, my alarm's getting set for 6. If I go to bed at 9, it may be 5, maybe a little bit later. But I prioritize trying to get that amount of sleep because I know my body needs it regardless of whatever this thing says. You know what I mean? So I think, you got to find that balance of knowing and understanding what that body is telling you because, at the end of the day, you kind of know what you're feeling.
If you're feeling really good and you want to have a big workout, even though it says you're not fully recovered, sometimes you just go ahead and do it. And just to add on that, one thing this does do pretty well is it calibrates to your body and it builds up a data baseline over time. So like when you first put this thing on, your first week or so, it has no idea if you're recovered, right? It doesn't have any data to base that off of. And now that we've had it for 4 or 5 weeks, it's building all of that data, and it's basically creating a baseline for what your recovery would be, right? So like the first couple of weeks you have it doesn't really know what it's telling you. And it's saying, oh, the first 2 nights you were, you're 20% recovered. It really doesn't know that. What's it basing that off of? So one thing the software does a good job of is building that data over time. And another thing you have to take into consideration is that it's all based off of your baseline. It's not going to base my recovery off of Jimmy's baseline. So for example, if Jimmy has a lower resting heart rate and a generally higher HRV than I do, the next day we get up, Jimmy's stats may be better than mine, respective to me, or with respect to me, but with respect to his normal baseline, it's not very good. So my recovery may be better than his, according to the way the data is trending, but it may not be a good recovery for him. So one thing it does a good job of over time, and we're still kind of learning a little bit about that because it only has been about a month, is it calibrates based off of your baseline data set over long periods of time. So that's another thing it does too that I forgot to mention. That's kind of an important piece of all of it.
Gotcha. Yeah. So just data specifically personalized to you, like not taking any shortcuts. I like that. That's cool. Maybe I'll get one. Maybe Whoopstrap should sponsor the show. Just shout out Whoopstrap. But anyway, I appreciate you breaking that down for me, guys. Thank you so much. So I have a couple other things here that I definitely wanted to run by you guys because I know that fitness and all this, everything that we've talked about here is a large portion of your life. It's something that, keeps you guys grounded and obviously something that you guys are passionate about. However, I know that is not where the buck stops with you guys. You have actual, like professional careers. And I believe you guys just purchased a home for like a rental purposes and such like that. So like, let's dive into the fun stuff, another realm of fun things. So actual like adulthood, like business, like, so Nick and I think Jimmy as well, like we had this conversation probably, I think one of the first times you and I met, Jimmy, like kind of the idea of, forming business entities and like getting some, residual income from, rental properties and all that sort of stuff. Maybe we go down that road. How did you guys get, first introduced to that? How did you guys think that was something that you wanted to pursue?
Well, for me, I always thought to myself, one day I want to be able to be financially independent, right? I want to arrive at a point someday where I don't have to wake up and go work with somebody else if I don't want to. So I know Nick and I had explored various avenues of strategies that we might be able to start doing now that would set us up down the road to one day be able to do that. And very quickly, we stumbled upon real estate, where we started thinking to ourselves, well, in terms of investments, I think there's something to be said about investing in something that is tangible, right? Stock market's great. You can make some money there. You can buy bonds. You can buy put money in money markets, whatever. But there's something to be said about having something physical. And then, you have that in conjunction with the fact that there's always going to be a need for people to live somewhere, right? There's always going to be a need for a roof over your head. So really quickly, that told me that, if there's ever a way to start building a little bit of a side hustle to start building some supplemental income, real estate might be the way to go. And we've explored that, idea for about 2 years now, and we can unpack that a little bit here. But Nick, anything to add?
Yeah, just to kind of going off what Jimmy said, COVID put a little bit of a damper on everything too, just in terms of our search. And we kind of had some plans, and we weren't really sure. We had talked to a lot of people and had some influences, just talking to friends of our dads and just some people we knew, some mentors and that kind of thing, just to introduce us to it really. Because Jim, correct me if I'm wrong, we were getting a lot of different feedback on different strategies and different things to do and stuff like that. And we had all these plans and stuff, and really kind of where it started was like, well, we need a place to live.
Yeah.
And we want to get into real estate. So I guess the easiest and lowest barrier to entry was to buy a place that we were going to live in first. And, that may eventually become a rental. But it was the fact that we wanted to get involved with it, and we didn't necessarily have buku bucks to just start dropping on real estate, right? Because there's expenses, there's things going on, and we're young, but we wanted to get involved. So kind of starting there is just like, buying a place that we were going to live in to start, not only the obvious one of not having to pay rent, and, putting money into the actual house that you're living in and gaining some equity in that house. But it was the lowest barrier to entry too for us, right? So instead of just going out and buying a building to rent out, it was not only easier for us to do, but that lower barrier to entry, especially for young people trying to get involved.
Yeah, definitely. So you guys were renting beforehand, I know, and now you've purchased the house, and you guys are currently living there. I know you guys moved in and everything.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations.
Freshly moved in.
Thank you.
Nice. So what did the process kind of teach you? So obviously, you're probably gonna and two, maybe you can kind of mention the plan. So you're gonna live there at least for some period of time, right? But like, what did the process teach you? And if you look ahead with the things that you guys know, the strategies, Burr method, and all that sort of stuff that we talked about in the past, what do you think, like, foreshadowing, would you do maybe differently on your next buy, or like just what did it teach you in general? Like, I mean, you can kind of hit on any of it. Was it fun?
It was fun. It was a little scary and anxiety inducing, but it was fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's funny too, because as we started diving into it, some of the initial things that we had to do, going to get joint bank accounts set up, going to get pre-approved, having initial conversations with a realtor, stuff like that. And because Nick and I are the type of people to dot our I's and cross our T's and really get into the weeds with that kind of stuff, it wasn't that hard because, we're good learners, and we were able to consult people in our network, read about things, buy books, that kind of stuff. So getting started wasn't super challenging. And then as we, went through the process of putting in an offer and, going down the financing route and squaring away all those details, I think some of our engineering background started to pay a lot of dividends, because we started breaking this down like any other problem we saw at Penn State Engineering. Right? We thought about every single possible variable.
Our agent laughs at us.
Really?
Oh, yeah. She's like, we are some of the most hard to deal with people that she's probably had, because of how in-depth and how in the weeds we got with the numbers, trying to project out what were the expenses going to be, what are the taxes
We read stuff that nobody else reads.
Really?
People read them, but like most people don't.
Yeah. So, having that experience in a business sense proved to be really, really valuable. And also, man, the one thing I will say about the place is, through going and looking at a bunch of different homes, the first couple of times we walked in a house for the first time, we're like, oh, this place is fantastic. It's great. Look at the, nice molding. Look at the nice kitchen. But then as we started going through the second and the third time, we're like, like they may have cut a corner here, or these outlets aren't up to code, or, there's something wrong with the place. So, I think it taught us a lot about, the actual finance and that process, but also what goes into making a good home, and what are some of the small things you should look for. There was really insightful stuff.
Yeah. Interesting. So do you guys feel good about it though? Like overall, like would you say it was relatively successful first buy?
I would say it went pretty well. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Nice. And as far as the plan, like live there for a few years and then try to like level up the game and just try to keep moving forward till something happens, or
that's the idea. Yeah. I mean, with everything going on now too, the exact plan isn't set in stone.
Right, of course.
But the natural progression is to, when we have some cash, start looking around again, and the next one is obviously not going to be one we're going to be living in. So there's still some things we have to toy with there in terms of strategies and exactly how we want to go about that. And I don't think we've fully hashed that out, but we've got some ideas.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, we both threw a decent amount of money at it. So like, I'm certainly not in a position to buy a house tomorrow or next month. So it's going to take some time anyway, just to, save up some cash, which is a good thing, because now we got to kind of get to see how our current investment in the place is going to either succeed or start, maybe going up or down in value, those kinds of things. And I'm sure we'll continue to gain some market insights from that.
Certainly, yeah.
Part of the funny thing is too, we always say, well, if one of us crashes and burns, the other one crashes and burns. So,
right.
So
Right.
there's company in failure in any case, but it's not,
I mean, it's real estate's an interesting thing. It's something that I want to get into, but obviously, like you guys just said, it takes time, especially to accumulate that. And when you're doing other things, you can't just jump into something like that. But yeah, I think it's cool to do that with a partner, so you kind of have like, I guess double the liquid assets to kind of throw at it. You can maybe get like a better place. How does that, did you guys get any, did it positively or negatively affect like the loan process and stuff like that? Did they give you any stuff because it was like was it a joint personal venture effectively?
There were a couple things that didn't necessarily affect us because we're in relatively good financial standing. But, there are some things with credit checks and things like that, people doing it different ways. And, there are a couple extra maybe little hoops to jump through just being joint with applications and that kind of thing. But really, it wasn't as bad as I was expecting it to be, honestly. It really wasn't so bad. And honestly, like, there were so many times where one of us would catch something that the other may not have caught, right? And just like having two eyes looking at everything. I know there were plenty of times where I missed something that Jimmy saw, right? Or vice versa.
Yeah.
And it was just like, it kind of takes a little bit of the fear aspect out of it too. Just you are doing it with another person. But yeah, just being able to have two eyes on everything, those benefits far outweighed the very small, humps we had to cross just doing it together as opposed to separate.
I gotcha.
Yeah, and Mark, the one thing I will add to that is, I know Nick and I had been talking about this for at least 18 months, right? We were planning about whether or not we were going to buy an investment property or buy a place we were going to live in. And I'll tell you what, man, there was a lot of anxiety around what we were going to do, how we were going to do it. And
analysis by paralysis a
yeah,
little bit.
We were getting paralyzed by that. And the most successful part in the journey was not closing day. It was the day that we placed an offer and that offer got accepted, because we went from all of this being a smoke and mirrors and something that was an idea, and we did the damn thing, right? We took a concrete step towards the goal of creating some sort of side hustle, a step in that direction of supplemental income. And at least for me, that was hands down the most rewarding part, because we took a concrete step to trying to make the thing happen. And Nick, man, it was just there was
so
so
much
hype about that.
There was so much like random background work. We're like, I hope this doesn't all go to waste. I mean, I remember during COVID, actually, it wasn't even a day. It was a period of several days that we sat down and basically researched on the internet for days and days and days how interest rates on homes were actually created. And it was just like, what are we even doing here? Yeah. What are we even doing right now?
In the weeds.
We were in the weeds just for no reason. And I don't even remember like 75% of it at this point. It's all in a Word doc sitting on a file on my computer.
Yeah.
But, all of it really wouldn't have meant anything if we didn't actually do something. So, yeah, like Jim said, it felt pretty good. Maybe a little bit scary here and there, putting all your money into this thing, this house.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's cool.
Nice.
It showed us that we could actually make it happen.
Yeah.
Like we turned this idea, something that we had just thought about as college students and young professionals, and just the fact of making it happen. And granted, it was just buying a house. It wasn't like we turned a company into $100 million. It wasn't anything super crazy. We just bought a crib. But just the fact that we took a step and actually started to do it, man, it's like, all right, like, we can play this game. We can hang with the big dogs. Like, we've arrived.
Yeah.
That was that feeling. We've arrived.
Yeah, definitely. No, yeah. I mean,
One of the
incremental steps. Yeah, good.
I was just going to say, one of the cool parts, too, about it is, and I know Jimmy and I both feel this way, I think anyways, for us, part of it was trying to build a team. And, not that we have this big, crazy team now, but it was really cool to be able to work with our agent at Berkshire Hathaway, Tina Cicero, who's awesome, by the way.
Shout out, Tina.
Shout out. She really guided us along the way, and she introduced us to some folks that really helped us, like our lender, for example, who we've been able to work pretty closely with, and some other individuals, even home inspectors and that kind of thing. It's just been really cool to be able to have someone to help us build our team. And, now next time it makes this process so much easier, one, because we kind of know a little bit how to do it. And two, just because we have people to go to now, we people that we've done business with, and we trust, and having those people is a pretty cool thing too. So that was a big part of this. Was we wanted to we worked with different people along the way, and lenders and stuff like that, and we were like, they might not be for us. We're looking for mentors and that kind of thing, and trying to pick and choose that team and pick and choose the individuals who we think could help us long term and be with us and help us get where we want to be. It's just mutually good for everybody, and the team part of it is just one more thing I wanted to throw in that was really huge.
Definitely, yeah. Building that Rolodex of experienced and knowledgeable individuals, I think, is priceless. Especially if you like you said, if you guys are trying to do this long term, a joint venture of like, rental properties or whatever it may be, you need to have, you need to go back to Tina, like next time and stuff like that. I think that's super important, because that is a very difficult thing to find people that you can trust and that you're confident are knowledgeable. So once you have that, you gotta store that and keep moving. So
Absolutely.
definitely agree with that. So that's kind of like, long term though, supplemental and a great idea. As far as like right now and kind of like in the immediate future, I know you guys currently work full-time jobs as professionals. I'm sure COVID has turned that upside down as far as how you work and stuff like that. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that. But like, what do you think right now? We don't need to go like super in depth. You don't need to necessarily say like everything obviously that you do. I'm sure it's government secret stuff, here and there. No, I'm just kidding. But in general, what do you guys find out of like employment? Like, is it fulfilling? Like maybe some of the good, bad sides of it. Again, it can be kind of abstract, but like, even I like to ask this question because I found myself in a similar position where it's like I wasn't really enjoying everything, and I'm not saying that you guys do or don't, but I'm always interested in what people's day-to-days, like their feelings are, when they go to work or when they do whatever they do, 9 to 5, so however you guys want to proceed.
Yeah, so I'll take the first stab at this one. I'd say there are two main drivers for why I do my day job at ExxonMobil. And the first one is, the obvious answer of trying to provide for my family. Right now I'm a single guy, but, I feel like there's still people that depend on me in my life. If something were to ever happen to my mom or my dad or my brother, like, it's time for me to be able to, step up if something bad would ever happen. So that's probably the first thing. But second, and this is the most important thing of what I try and get out of my day job as a field engineer, it's trying to build the skills that I want to have to get me one day where I want to go. And, down the road, I see myself either as a, moving up the corporate ladder at a big company like ExxonMobil, or one day starting my own company. And, for me, given my current job as a mix of sales and engineering, I personally want to hone those skills. I want to learn how to sell. I want to learn how to speak well in front of a crowd. I want to be able to manage relationships and manage a team. So, in my day-to-day, when I take a step back, or if I'm ever, wondering why I'm doing what I'm doing, I think back to those two things. Like, hey, I'm trying to, put bread on the table, and B, I'm doing this because it's helping me gain skills that I know I'm going to need to get where I want to go.
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Yeah, I guess I'll hop in. Kind of the getting the whole skills to be where you want to be or go where you want to go thing. That's a big, so I guess I'll back up. I work for a smaller robotics company, Carnegie Robotics. It's down in Lawrenceville. And I had the opportunity to do some internships during college and that kind of thing, and kind of explore what I wanted to do. And what I thought I wanted to do, it didn't end up working out, graduating college. So I ended up at this robotics company in Lawrenceville, Carnegie Robotics. And immediately I kind of fell in love with the small company environment. I hadn't had a chance to be exposed to that. So for me, it's been more of like I'm doing it because I like what I'm doing, and I like having my hands in a lot of different things and getting back to the building skills to do what I want to do. Maybe 10 years down the road, I want to start a company. Being at a small company of 100, 150 people or so has been giving me the opportunity to get my feet wet in a lot of different areas of building a company. So this company it's not big, but being able to touch supply chain and manufacturing and sales and all these different things is kind of teaching me, kind of how a small business works. Whereas I had worked for bigger companies in the past. And for me personally, I get a lot of fulfillment out of doing those different things or getting my feet wet in these different areas. I can go get another engineering job wherever, but I don't really want to do that. And I'm sure Jimmy can attest to this too, but we both had internships and stuff, and you never get the chance at an internship to like grow or build anything because you're just an intern. But after you've been at a place for a while and, you at least halfway like it, you kind of start to build up this, like, I don't know if rapport is the right word, but you start to build up kind of like a skill set and you start to gain a base there, and you really want to start to grow that. And I really like that feeling. And I like the feeling of, adding value and making a difference. And, you know, like I said, I can go get another engineering job, but I don't really want to do that. I kind of like the idea of the hectic kind of, you know, crazy stuff going on. And because I know one day that might be me, you know, whether it's starting my own company or whatever it is. I feel that I get a lot of like, and Mark, we've talked about this, you know, at other points in time, but just the value you get from like those being like at a small company and being able to do things like you're the only one that does that. And you're learning all these different things and being thrown into the fire. So for me, I love this as like it's obviously a job and it provides me money to live my life and survive. But I'm trying to use the job as in this career like moving forward, building like a set of skills that I can use down the road, whether it's with this company or whether it's, you know, starting a company. I don't know what it's going to be. I can't tell the future, but that's kind of where I find the fulfillment is just all that.
I think that's definitely both of you guys have a good outlook on it, because I think that I always go back to myself just because that's the experience I know the most. And I think that is definitely the best way to think about being in a position like you're in, Nick, or even like you're in, Jimmy, like anything where you're learning new things on a day-to-day basis and you're constantly being challenged and developing new skills. That's just going to benefit you long term, you know, and it's whether you're doing it for yourself or doing it for somebody else, as long as you have your fulfillment in mind and your, you know, I like to say your best interest, even though like we all think about other people and we want to make sure that everybody else is taken care of as well. But as long as I really truly believe in this idea that if you're not okay, like if you're not fulfilled, or if you're not like working on yourself, if you don't have your shit in order, to put it bluntly, then you can't really pass anything on to other people, because it's going to be tainted. Like you can't tell somebody else or like, you know, give somebody else advice on fitness unless you know how to, unless your fitness is kind of in order. It's kind of like a, you know, just one analogy that I would say. So, but no, I think that's great, guys. You got a lot going for you here. Very excited for the future, and you know, professionally, personally, and all that sort of stuff. And so congratulations with everything that's going on.
You're the man.
Yeah, appreciate it, dudes. Okay, so we are coming up close on time here, so I want to hit you guys with these last 3 questions. Are you ready for them?
Let's hear it.
Okay, so we kind of talked about them a little bit here, but that generally tends to happen just with the content that we normally go through here. But there's 3 questions. The first one is, who are your top 3 biggest influences? And again, we kind of, you know, alluded to this earlier, but if you had to put 3, you know, they can be people that you know, they could be indirect, they could be groups, however you want to slice it. But who would you guys say like your top 3 are? Whoever wants to go first.
I feel like these are going to be the same people, or like at least 1 or 2 are going to be the same.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, not to be cliche or obvious here, and you know, we have mentioned these people, but like Joe Rogan's a big one. And I'll kind of, I guess, go into like just a little bit of detail on why for each of them, not just to say them, but like for the reasons. And I kind of talked about having multiple role models, but Jimmy and I consider ourselves to try to be generalists and improving in all these different areas. And Joe Rogan, I guess, number 1, does that really well, right? He has people on his podcast. He forces himself to go out of his comfort zone and do things he hasn't done, and, you know, just kind of try to be that ultimate generalist. Yeah. And for that reason, and in that area, I would say Joe has probably been the biggest influence there for me. And there's probably a million people out there that would say that same thing, but it's really true, and he's had a big impact on me. And not just him, but the people he brings on there, you know, all have these different skill sets. Yeah, so all that kind of ties up to kind of be one pillar of that. Another one I'll say, and actually turned on to me by Jimmy a long time ago, it was Jocko. You know, that's the discipline side of things. The nobody cares, you know, you have to work, you have to be disciplined, and that's ultimately going to equal your freedom, right, is being able to be disciplined and attach that to all these different things. So, you know, if you have this lifestyle of you want to try to be good at a lot of different things, you're going to suck at them. If you apply the Rogan generalism and the Jocko discipline to each and every one of those, you'll eventually grow in each of those areas. And the third one, I don't want to like put my finger in anyone, and I would say, and you might hate the answer to this question I'm about to say now, but I'm going to leave that spot kind of rotating, and I would say right now I'm going to put somebody in that spot, and that's David Goggins, whose audiobook I'm just finishing up now. Title of it's called Can't Hurt Me, and a lot of people have heard of that. And what I really love about David Goggins, who I've known about for a while and followed for a while on social media and that kind of thing, is, you know, he had a very tough upbringing, And he went through some very tough things in life, and he kind of preaches similar to what Jocko preaches, kind of the nobody cares. You have to keep working, and you have to continue to be on that journey and work to improve, even if it sucks. You know, you have to keep going forward. And that's something that I guess just to have that rotating third party in there right now. That's who I'll say is the third. And I preach a lot of these people all the time, but you know, since you asked, I'm giving them to you.
Absolutely.
I'm giving them to you.
I don't blame you.
Sorry, Jimmy, if I took one or two. Or
you took all of them.
I don't blame you for having the rotating third, because there's no way. I asked this question to everyone, and there's no way I could narrow it to 3. So
yeah, it's hard. Yeah,
but
I did the best I could. I did the best I could with that one.
Yeah, I appreciate it. So, Jim, you think?
Yeah. So, you know, I'm going to preface with what I'm about to say to say that everyone that Nick said has been an extreme influence on my life as well. And I'm not going to just essentially re-say all of the reasons that you just said, because frankly, I am 100% on board with Jocko Willink, everything he stands for, the Joe Rogans of the world, his particular approach to being a generalist and having an open mind and putting his ego aside and trying to learn. You know, those are the types of people where, you know, I look at and I want to be like them because they have their ego in check, because they want to learn. So those guys are a given, right? But I'm going to give a little bit of a curveball answer here and give one answer that's kind of like an overarching answer. And I'm going to say it's my boys, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to say it is my best friends, the Nick DiSantis of the world, the Alex Connors of the world, and the list can go on and on and on and on, because frankly, you know, if I were to try and name names, I would forget somebody, because there are so many people in my life who I can call up on the phone and say, hey man, like, you know, I'm having a bad day. Like, you know, what should I do here? Right. You know, or I have this idea, let me run it by you, or, you know, let's just, you know, shoot the breeze, whatever it may be. You know, I rely on those people in my network to be the people that I look up to, because, you know, I try and surround myself with people that I want to be like, right? You know, you heard the age-old saying, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. You know, we've heard that before. And I really do believe it's true, man, because, you know, I would not be where I am today without my boys, you know, especially Nick, because, you know, whenever I see Nick that's going to hammer that 10-mile run or going to get that workout in, and I look at myself and I'm like, oh, I didn't work out today. Like, I have no choice but to go hammer because I see Nick going to hammer, right? So
the accountability thing.
It's an accountability thing. If I surround myself with a bunch of like-minded people in terms of the like-mindedness of wanting to progress and get better at whatever it is they want to do, because all of my friends are, you know, they're very interested in a bunch of different things. So, you know, by having those people around me constantly having conversations with them and constantly trying to make the effort to stay in touch with both people around here in Pittsburgh, but also my friends in New York and Philly and Texas and wherever else, right? It's those people who I look up to, because, you know, if there's somebody in my life, they're going to be there because they're adding value to me in some way. And that's not to sound like, oh, like I'm using people. It's more like, hey, like, you're in my life because you make me better. And, you know, you're making me strive to become a better person. So that's what I'd say.
And you reciprocate that. Yeah. It's just
absolutely got to pay forward.
Everybody moves the needle forward like that. Yeah. So I couldn't agree more, boys. Question 2. What is the best advice that you could give somebody, like, so far in your life, like the things that you've been able to accomplish, the situations you've been in? Like, if you just give, like, you know, somebody, like, paying it forward, like we just mentioned, like somebody coming up, what's the best advice? It could be anything. It could be any realm, but just in general.
Yeah. Can I take this one first?
Go ahead. I'll let you start. Yeah.
Okay. It's one really simple piece of advice, and it's, you've got to enjoy the ride.
Yeah.
Right. You know, I said this earlier, there is no end. And when I discovered that, you know, there is no such thing as you're finishing your mission and then you're going to frolic off into the sunset and into a fairy tale. That does not exist. That will not happen. So you must be content with the process, right? You must be okay with the fact that, you know, you're striving towards a mission. And if you accomplish that mission, there will always be another mission that comes up. So, you know, for me, it's like you have to accept that. And because of that, once you accept that, man, if you just enjoy the ride, the rest will take care of itself.
Perfect.
This is one of those questions, Mark, where if you asked me this 10 times over the course of a year, I'd probably give you 10 different answers.
Yeah.
But right now, the answer I'll give you is one piece of advice that I would give everyone, not just somebody that's trying to be somewhere they're not or whatever, is to always try to look at the perspective of the other person you're dealing with whenever you're doing whatever it is that you're doing, or just perspective in general. What you think of something may not be the same as what somebody else thinks of something. And continuing on with that is, if you're having a dispute with somebody or somebody ticks you off or whatever it is, always consider, and maybe it's a good situation, whatever situation it is, whoever's involved, analyzing the perspective of every other party involved before you make any decision or any move to do anything. I think that's really important, and that's one that lately for me has had a big impact and a big influence. So since you're asking me this now, I'll say always making sure you look at things from every perspective before you take any action. Yeah. And that's a big one. I would say that one, a lot of different times. But again, if you ask this question 10 times, I give you 10 answers. Yeah. But right now, that's kind of the first thing that came to my mind, and the one that right now is, near and dear to me. So I'll say the perspective thing. Yeah,
it's absolutely important, especially in times like these where everybody just gets crazy because they're not looking at things from multiple sides. So could not agree more with that. Okay, the last one is actually a layup. So depending on the different people that, we bring on here, some people have businesses, some people are trying to work on different things. It's kind of just like the reason that I do this last question is because I'm very appreciative of everybody that comes on the show. Thank you again, boys. Tremendously, it's been a great talk. But I want to make sure that if there's anything that you guys are working on, like independently, or just like even your own followings on like social media or anything like that, or if you want to plug something else, somebody else, an entity or something like that, whatever you guys feel passionately about, I want to make sure that anybody watching that has, taken anything from this talk here, if they want to continue to follow you guys or follow, again, something you feel passionately about, I always like to roll this red carpet out for you. So this is your time to just kind of like talk about whatever you kind of feel
Sure.
good about.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily have anything specific I want to, promote or throw out there. But kind of just tying up, I don't know if I'll call it my purpose or whatever it is. I just want to, kind of reiterate the fact that you need to keep hammering in order to not only like achieve what you want to do, but continue on this journey. And there will be ups and downs on the journey, and you might fail a lot of times, but just kind of wrapping up everything we've been talking about, just continuing to always push on. And I guess I'm not too crazy on social media. I do a little bit on there, but not a whole lot. I have a LinkedIn and Instagram and stuff like that.
I can put the links in the description.
Yeah,
we could do that.
Mark, you talk about building the brand, and that's something Jimmy and I both try to do. But I don't have anything too particular, any specific projects or anything I'm working on. Just keep hammering, continue the motto, keep pushing forward, and do what you love to do, I guess.
It's perfect. It's good stuff.
Yeah, so the first thing I'll say is you can hit me at Instagram. Instagram, James Farbo is my handle. Yep. Hit me on
link in the description.
Hit me a link on the description. Hit me on LinkedIn as well. You can find me there. Dap me up on there. I really appreciate it. And the final thing I'll say is I want to give a shout out to my boy Alex Connor. He's a longtime friend of mine who is currently getting his PhD in chemical engineering at a school called Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute in upstate New York. And there's a lot of stuff that I can't say about what he's doing, but what I will say is, he's got some awesome business ideas, particularly regarding silk and silk protein. It's a fiber and a protein that has some unbelievable qualities, and there are some intense business applications about it. So I'm helping out a little bit with that, but I can't say any more specifics. So what I'll say is go check out Alex Connor's LinkedIn page as well. He has a phenomenal 45-minute intro video on his profile that talks a little bit about his research, some of the things that he's trying to do, and some of the potential applications that his research has. So go check him out, absolutely. And the final thing I'll say is, in spirit of the show and in spirit of Fueled by Progress, I say we keep hammering. I say we keep pushing forward, and in David Goggins' voice, we stay hard, right?
Yes, sir.
So stay hard, baby.
Stay hard, and it's all about the ride. So just got to keep on pushing forward.
Yes, sir. Yes,
through
sir.
the up and down.
Appreciate it, boys. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us, brother.
Everyone, links and everything like that in the description. Everything we talked about. Again, thank you guys so much. Greatly appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of Fueled by Progress with our guests, Nick DiSanti, Jimmy Farbo. We thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll talk to you in the next one.